Video games are art. I mean, obviously, anything a human makes could, in theory, be called art, but I mean that video games are art. High art. Real hoity-toity stuff. Or at least it has the potential to be. I'm not going to defend, like, Candy Crush as art, any more than I would try to tell you that Garfield is literature. Cue the Garfield maniacs. But no, actually, seriously? Video games can be art, and almost all of the best ones are. I'm going to show you why I think so, as well as giving some examples of the best of the best. Let's start simple. What makes up the art form of the video game? Let's talk about conveyance and theming. Conveyance is guiding the player into the right path so that they know what the heck they're doing. Theming is setting up expectations and goals for the player. And these are the two most important tools of game design, or the art of video games. Now take Mega Man X. The intro level teaches step-by-step where to go, how to use abilities, and how to overcome obstacles. Not only that, it sets up expectations for the player through Zero, a character clearly meant to mirror the player character X, but with all of his endgame abilities. It also introduces the villain, Vile, who serves as a goal, the ultimate obstacle for the player to overcome. It's simple, but this is the basis for all the ways video games fill you in on their basic concepts, without always having to spell it out for you. Not only that, but the art design for the level gives clues about what's going on. This is a futuristic city, but it's under pretty brutal attack, as evidenced by the destroyed cars and buildings. This is all fundamental stuff, but it serves to tell a story visually. And more advanced games in later years take those principles up a notch. Let's take a look at, for example, Dark Souls. Dark Souls uses very similar tricks for conveyance that Mega Man X did, though the main lesson learned is that the game is not going to go easy on you, and if you want to succeed, you'll have to learn lessons the hard way. What's unique about this game, though, and the reason I'm mentioning it, is story. Dark Souls has a story, with lots of characters whose backstories intertwine and add to the overall lore, but almost none of it is apparent or told to the player directly. See, most of the story in Dark Souls is relayed by optional conversations with non-player characters, item descriptions, and environmental clues. It combines the ideas of conveyance and theming with a lot of mystery and missable bits of backstory. A player who's not interested won't care, and doesn't have to sit through, for example, lots of animated cutscenes. But players who want to know can search through pages worth of story and get the satisfaction of piecing the puzzle together for themselves. So we're already seeing how gaming can provide a unique narrative experience, different from any other medium. So, even though video games rely heavily on conveyance and theming, they certainly aren't the only media that use these tools. However, they do have one piece in their arsenal that's totally unique: agency. Agency is the feeling of choice and control that the player has during a game. In just about any video game, the player has at least one choice: to progress or not. Game over. That's pretty simplistic, though. Many games give a lot more agency to the player. In the interest of narrative, choice is a great tool. Take games like Life is Strange or Until Dawn. The plot of these games changes quite a bit depending on how the player makes their choices, or even fails to choose in time to make a difference. Characters' relationships change, the game's world adapts to the differences, and what's interesting about agency is, it doesn't really matter how much changes or stays the same, it's all about the player feeling like they're making choices and having an impact on the world. Even something as simple as being able to approach areas from multiple directions, or the occasional dialogue option, can go a long way to get the player invested, if done right. Take an early segment of Chrono Trigger. The player can do a lot of things at the Millennial Fair, such as stealing some guy's lunch, or helping a girl, or even being nice or rude to this lady. All these choices come back for a later scene where the protagonist is on trial. Some actions make you look guilty, others don't. In the end, the story isn't changed much by this trial's result, though the game does reward good behavior with extra items. Despite this, it can be fun to do the right thing and be rewarded, or to be a jerk and take the rap. The ways in which the player can interact with the game's world are varied, even if the ultimate outcomes aren't. This is all contributing to the most important thing in any fictional medium, which is immersion. Being immersed in a work of fiction means that on some level, for a short amount of time, your mind forgets that this?
Sorry you got twisted up in this scene. From where you're kneeling must seem like an 18-carat run of bad luck. Truth is, the game was rigged from the start.
Isn't reality. Player agency is a major way video games do this, but the great thing about games is that they are by their very nature a multiplicitous experience. Music, story,
A sad story. We shouldn't have turned our backs on the Kurds after the Gulf War.
Listen, we're not responsible for her choices. Everyone decides their own fate, no matter where they were born. Words like fate, karma, it's just an excuse for giving up if you ask me.
I don't agree with you. Maybe if she hadn't been born on a battlefield, she might have had a happier, more fulfilling life. She might not have turned into a killer.
agency.
But at last, he'd had enough of the amazing room, and took the first open door on his left to get back to business. Stanley was so bad at following directions, it's incredible he wasn't fired years ago.
It all comes together to form an atmosphere, an enveloping experience. And even if one element fails, the others can cover for it well enough to hopefully keep the player invested. So I've been talking about how gaming is a narrative art form. It's like a novel or a film. It tells a story. But here's the big question. Can a video game support storytelling worthy of being called literature? I think it can. And there's one game in particular that I think does it. Silent Hill 2. Silent Hill is a horror series, and the first game was a pretty standard offering for the genre. Dark, creepy rooms, jump scares, spooky noises. It was a good game, but not much of a story. For the sequel, though, Silent Hill's developers pushed the boundaries of what kind of story a video game could tell.
I was weak. That's why I needed you. Needed someone to punish me for my sins. But that's all over now. I know the truth. Now it's time to end this.
Especially for the time it was released, 2001 in the US. The game uses its horrific overtones to explore even darker undertones, such as child abuse, marital problems, suicide, and even the psychology of a killer, and how a normal person can be pushed to those extremes. The tone of the game is reminiscent of Poe or Lovecraft, an ordinary man struggling with nightmarish ordeals that are probably a manifestation of his own mind, which in some ways is more frightening than if they were real. The game has a message, a story worthy of film or literature, but delivered in ways only a game could. One of the best examples of video games is art. Now this was 2001. Nowadays there are lots of games like this, games whose main goal is to tell a story, or convey an emotion, or capture a moment, and they are really good at it. Because the thing is, games aren't like other media. Books you read, art you look at, music you listen to, films you watch, it's all passive. Video games, though, make their audience an active participant. So that no matter if it's 16-bit action or psychological horror, you don't just passively view it. The game is an experience, a vivid memory, as if you lived it. Which is why some games have had such a huge emotional impact on people, a whole generation of people. And it's why I think they deserve to be considered an art form in their own right, alongside cinema, novels, oil paintings, whatever Donatello did. It's art.